Okay, well,
It's just a regular lamb somewhere else, it's nothing, but because today it's Yikrat, it's Korban Pesach ready, Yikrat to Erev. It's almost like matzah. And you have to make the feel of the matzah at night. If you start eating it during the day, it's like you're taking away from it.
all that, there's no issue to your rights of doing such a thing. You're talking about a law, you're talking about eating markets. Well, for what?
The law could be you can't eat the Korban Pesach on Erev Pesach.
It
Oh,
doesn't,
There is no such law.
it doesn't say you can't eat it, during the day.
Says,
What?
It does, there's no commandment that you have to eat sukkah at night. Here, there is a commandment that you can't eat sukkah, except during the day, except during the night.
no. It's saying that you have to eat roasted Korban Pesach at night. There's a
Right.
you have to eat it at night.
Right.
Nowhere can you infer that I can't eat it any other time. For lunch,
If you eat it,
you had leftover, you know how to eat the leftovers. You make you roast you roast a lamb for lunch on first day Pesach.
But if you're
You're
saying
allowed
that this is my Korban Pesach,
that's what I'm saying.
I can say whatever I want to say, doesn't make it a Korban Pesach.
You're calling this the Korban Pesach. This I should wait till at nighttime. I'm hungry, I ate it before. So it should be a laugh because I ate it before the time you're supposed to eat it. Because I already called it a Korban
Okay.
Pesach.
To be allowed, you have to have a pasuk in Torah and say, don't eat it erev Pesach. Just because I have a commandment, a positive commandment, to eat it at night, does not logically imply that I can't eat it at another time.
you're
Yes,
absolutely
it
right.
does. You can only eat it at night. You can't eat it any other time. Eat it any other time, you're like, it's a lot. No? Okay, well.
That's right, you're sorry.
Yeah, I'll share with you something that I really like that's on topic. Thank God now we're learning Pesachim because, as you know, that's my shtick. And, there's a lot to be said about this. When it comes to, let's say, halachas with which we have practical experience, so we're all experts about that. No one's going to tell you suddenly how to run your Seder differently. But I'm going to, you know why? Because I'm an advocate for the promise that we made last year. You all said Lishana Abba Yerushalayim, even those of you who live in Jerusalem. What you meant by that was that you intend to do Korban Pesach this year. And as it gets closer, people are like, yeah, I said that. It's like prayer. I just say the words. I don't really mean it, right? Like all the Jews who live in Chutz La'aretz, Kabetz Nifriam Yisrael, but they don't actually take advantage of the opportunity. Even when the Goyim are busy starting to Nazi Germany them in the United States, they don't learn that lesson. Okay, fine. It takes a while. I'll show you something that I really like about this. You all know this pasuk. I'm going to give you two rules about Yom Kippur, which, if you think about them, they're in one Gemara, they're a few times in Shas. They'll tell you what the pasuk means, and then what happens? Sorry, I got something in my eye. And then suddenly you don't realize that there's a contradiction there. It says regarding Yom Kippur, what? It says, "B'tish'al ha'chodesh ba'erev me'erev ad erev tishbechu shabbatechem." Okay, from the 9th of Tishrei, from evening to evening. So Chazal asked, what's have to do with 9th? He just said Yom Kippur, the fast, is on the 10th. There's two rules about Yom Kippur. The first is the assumption of, let's say, the Rambam and other Rishonim is that you must eat on the 9th of Tishrei. It is a positive commandment. You can't take like a sacred vow. Let's say a person could vow today not to eat. That's fine. He doesn't have to eat on the second day of Adar. But he cannot vow not to eat on 9th of Tishrei because he has a biblical obligation, a biblical level obligation to eat on Erev Yom Kippur. Does it say, thou shalt eat on the 9th of the 7th month? Is there such a pasuk? How did Chazal know that? Secondly, you have to take in Yom Kippur early. You cannot wait for sundown and say, now I will desist from any malacha and eating and drinking. Instead, what do you have to do for Yom Kippur? You have to, according to all the Rishonim across the board, this is the basis for Tosefes Shabbos and early Shabbos and early Yontif. What do you have to do on Erev Yom Kippur? Take it in early. That means that whereas you should eat on the 9th day, you have an obligation to eat on the 9th of Tishrei, you also have an obligation to turn some of the 9th of Tishrei into Yom Kippur, which is contradictory. You told me the 9th is the opposite of Yom Kippur. It's the eating day. And suddenly you have to take some of the eating day and turn it into the 10th, which is the not eating day. How did Chazal know this? Two limudim in the same Gemara. The first is from Dishala Chodesh Ba'erev, on the 9th of the month Ba'erev, May Erev ad Erev Tishbethu Shabbatechem. What we all know says on the 9th from the evening, that's when you start the fast, which means part of the 9th day is part of the 10th. And it also means that on the 9th, most of the time you do the opposite of what you do on the 10th. Correct? Good. Two limudim that tell you that. There's a similar verse, and this is not what most of the Tosafists say, but it was in the times of Rashi, and there were Tosafists that point this out, and this is Shitas Rashi. Yeah, we're online. People are here. We're recording. So don't say anything you don't want to get recorded. So look at this. The pasuk says, you know this pasuk. Tosfos read this pasuk without the trump. Rashi and other Tosafists read it with the trump. And this is the Rambam Shita. And Rashi explains this elsewhere. But here it says, Barishon, that's the first month, Bar ba'asar yom lachodesh ba'erev, tochelu matzot ad yom ha'echad v'esrim lachodesh ba'erev. That's the same form of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is 1 day may erev ad erev. Passover is 7 days may erev ad erev from the 14th, not the 15th. The 14th may erev until the erev of the 21st. What does that mean? Well, if Yom Kippur meant two things: do the opposite of Yom Kippur on Erev Yom Kippur, but take some of that opposite day and add it to Yom Kippur. In this case, it would mean for Passover, the 7-day commandment to eat the matzahs means, as the Vilna Gaon points out, the commandment to eat matzah extends until the end of the festival. So you get a mitzvah, as Uncle Moshe would say, for just eating matzah toward the end of the 7th day of Passover, as Passover is leaving. That's Vilna Gaon explicitly. Even they say the Rambam held that way, and that's why every time you eat matzah on Passover, you have to do lechem oni. You have to break it before you say the bracha on a prusa, not on a shlema. If you have shalosh shudas on the 7th day of Passover on Shabbos, as the festival is ending, you're supposed to not have lechem mishneh. You take one of those matzahs and break it before the bracha, just like you do with at the Seder. So that means over here, according to the pasuk, just the way the Chazal understood it, this should tell us two rules. One, on Erev Pesach, you're not supposed to eat matzah. Is that a halacha? Yes, it is forbidden to eat matzah on Erev Pesach. And the Vilna Gaon is like the Rambam, the Rav Kapach puts out in the Zohar, very machmir with this. It's like it's a deraisa, which means not even the first few hours, and not even like Rabbeinu Tam says, matzah ashira. All matzah is included in this prohibition. Even matzah meal products. You can't eat kanedalach in a vegetable soup on Erev Pesach. That's matzah product. You're not to eat any form of matzah whatsoever. And if Shabbos was Erev Pesach, there's no way you could actually fulfill Shalosh Shudas. You have nothing you could possibly eat Erev Pesach in the afternoon that is mizonos. Nothing to do. That's the first rule. The second rule means, like Yom Kippur, there's Tosefes Yom Kippur, because it said from the 9th May Erev ad Erev. So if they're telling you to eat matzah from the 14th May Erev ad Erev, if you were to take in Passover early, you'd be allowed to start eating the matzah early. And indeed, that was the old opinion. Everybody likes the machmir opinion. Tosfos said, you have to wait until Tzeis. That's not Talmudic. As a matter of fact, this pasuk is telling you the opposite. And there were Tosafists who pointed that out. As for the Zman of eating Korban Pesach, it's an explicit pasuk. Rashi says in two places. When is the Zman of eating Korban Pesach, not matzah? But when exactly? At night? The Gemara, the pasuk says, Sham tizbach es a Pesach ba'arev, kivo hashemesh, moed tzeitzacham mitzrayim. Rashi on the Torah, Rashi in Brachos Tes, says, you slaughter it ba'arev, that's in the afternoon, tizbach es a Pesach ba'arev, kivo hashemesh, that's when you eat it, moed tzeitzacham mitzrayim, the time when you left Egypt is in the morning, you burn the leftovers. When is kivo hashemesh? Yes, sunset. The Zman achilas Korban Pesach, midoraisa, and there aren't achronim who are more machmir because they didn't have Korban Pesach. With regards to even saying Kiddush, they tell you have to wait until Tzeis. That's a chumrah. That's not Talmudic. That's an argument Tosfos makes. The other Rishonim didn't hold of that. They said, how is Pesach different than Shabbos? The Gemara and Arvei Pesach and other places hold like Chazal, which said what? Chazal said what? You could take in Shabbos early. You could say Kiddush early. You can eat early. You don't have to wait for sundown. That's called Tosefes Shabbos. Everybody agrees it's an option. Somehow or other for Yontif, it became more and more that it's not. You're looking very skeptical, but I just told you that that's the old halacha. The opinion of the Beis Yosef is, and always was, every Shabbos and every Yontif, you have an obligation to take in the Shabbos early by davening Maariv early. That's the Shulchan Aruch's opinion. No exception for Shavuos, no exception for Sukkot, no exception for any holiday whatsoever. Any holiday according to the Shulchan Aruch, all the chumras that you know of are post Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says Shavuos is coming in. You could take in Shavuos early and have Kiddush and eat your Shabbos meal, or your Yontif meal like it's Shabbos. There's no nafkamina. Sukkot, you could take in Sukkot early, sit in the sukkah, drink your wine, eat your bread, go to sleep. You're doing the mitzvah of sukkah, even if the sun has yet to set. It's called Tosefes Yontif. It's an obligation according to the Shulchan Aruch. It's an obligation. No one says it's an option. You don't have to. He's more mekel. But there you have it. This is the basis. This pasuk is the basis for the two halachas. You're not supposed to eat Pesach erev Pesach. Sorry, not supposed to eat matzah erev Pesach. And there's a din of Tosefes Pesach.
What's the source for the Sefer Torah?
So for every particular mitzvah, we could track when in history they start being machmir to perform that mitzvah at Seis. So, for example, the idea that Kiddush of Leil Pesach has to be at, for example, only after Seis is an idea introduced by the Tosafists. Okay? Yeah. So, what? No, the Makom Suda is Mefurish in the Gemara.
Meaning that that's the time of the Suda.
Yeah. So they said that, Ba'erev tochlu matzos. We just read it. B'arba asar yom lachodesh ba'erev tochlu matzos. They kick out the arba asar yom lachodesh ba'erev, which means they just say ba'erev tochlu matzos in the evening, and then they say, so let's be machmir Seis. Why not? Like the Rambam says, for most dinim, the night starts at Seis, just like Shabbos Shkia comes in at Shkia. For example, we just showed Mefurish pasuk. Rashi says in two places. This way the Rambam holds. There's no other opinion that we shown him otherwise. Korban Pesach, the time to eat it starts when? Shkia. Unless you were impure and you have to wait for Hariv Shemesh, which means you have to wait another 18 minutes. But assuming you purify yourself beforehand, you don't have to wait for Hariv Shemesh. You could start eating Korban Pesach at Shkia. So my nafkamina. And then the next chumrah of the Trumas Hadeshim was, if you're going to, the matzah is after Tzeis. Let's say I told you you have to eat your matzah after Tzeis. That means you could start your Seder an hour before that. Right? Tzeis would be, 20 minutes after the sun sets. How long does your Seder take? So start your Seder beforehand. The Chumrah is, and even the Kiddush and the Arba Kosos. Where'd that come from? It's not Chazal. If you'd hold like straight the Rambam, Kiddush is something you could do, Mi Ba'odyo. Especially if Pesach coincides with Shabbos. I normally take in Shabbos early, I say Kiddush, but my nafkamina this Shabbos. So that's saying. No, and the idea of taking in Shavuos late, that you can't take in Shavuos, that is a very late concept. The Shulchan Aruch never even heard of a Rishon that had it, because there's no Rishon that holds that way. That's an opinion from the 1600s. That's a concept, and by the way, it got inflated. It was, don't say Kiddush, but then it became, don't even say Mariv. But it contradicts the Shulchan Aruch statement in 6 places, his general opinion. All Shabboses and Yol Yontifs must l'chatchila be taken in early. If somehow we had a calendar that allowed for Shavuos to coincide with Shabbos, which it does not, this would be a big nafkamina. Suddenly this Shabbos we don't take in early. Excuse me, definitely a thing in my eye stuck here. Questions about that? I'm a little bit of an extremist in these things, because I think that these halachic chumras that are non-chazal are a big imposition on many people. There was someone who wanted to say at a Seder for really old people and youngsters, I want to make them involved. Remember, you're supposed to get the kids involved in the Seder, correct? That's an ideal. So if that's your chumrah, then starting your Seder late is, comes into contradiction. Whereas if you just follow these lenient opinions that are straight there in Shas and the Rishonim, you don't have such a problem. Every chumrah leads to a kula. If you're machmir for Zman, I'm only going to say Kiddush on Leil Pesach at Seis, just to know you're being makel on the kids. Unless you do like we do nowadays, which is you pump them full of processed sugar, and then they're just hyper all the time, and which is bad for their health. So you shouldn't do that to kids. Yeah, I remember hearing a major posek say he needs to do this at the nursing home. So he told them, look, they want to do a complete Seder, sing everything in Nirtza, and everything that's a piyut, sing at the beginning of the Seder. Of course, Seder means there's supposed to be an order. It's kind of weird if you start singing Gadya at the beginning. By the way, yeah. So do that, and then make sure, because you don't want to have Kiddush Chas v'Shalom before it says. I don't understand why, but I've never done this. And also the Chumrah of reading Megillah. This doesn't apply to you folks out here most of the years, because you read Megillah Leil Purim. What about the night after Tanis Esther? So the Shulchan Aruch doesn't say this explicitly, but the Beis Yosef, which is a much longer sefer, which is the long version of the Shulchan Aruch, says very clearly what is the minhag, the proper minhag, and why. The proper minhag is you don't have to wait for Tanis Esther to end to read Megillah. And by the way, like the only going, I'll just point out, you don't have to wait for it says for Tanis Esther to end. It ends at Shkia. But either way, you read the Megillah after Plag. That way you finish before the Shkia and people can go home and eat. The Shulchan Aruch says we read the Megillah on Erev Purim early for the benefit of those who have trouble fasting. That means that Tzibur, this isn't a kula that you could utilize for certain people. This is public policy. The public policy is and was until the time of the Shulchan Aruch that the Megillah reading on Tanis Esther is on Tanis Esther. That way it's easier on people. Wow, that's what it used to say. There are many arguments for doing this. The most important argument is Chazal never established a time for reading the Megillah at night because Chazal didn't even have the Megillah reading at night. It is post-Mishnaic. The Megillah reading that you're supposed to do is during the day. And even that can be early. When can that be early? 2 or 3 days earlier. The Shuk day. If you could read the Megillah as early as the 12th of Adar, so now suddenly like you're super machmir with the extra Megillah reading. It was introduced by Yerushalmi. It's a good thing to read the Megillah at night. But now suddenly everybody's machmir. Why are we machmir? There's an idea, the Pri Chadash, if I'm not mistaken, said that Rabbeinu Tam is the one who allows reading the Megillah early because he says you can even read Shema early. It's true. There's a Dachwi opinion that everybody follows, by the way, all the time. Every time they have early Shabbos, they don't just do like the Shulchan Aruch says, Mariv, that's Shmona Esrei of Mariv Shabbos early. They even say Kriya Shema early while the sun is still shining. That's Rabbeinu Tam. That everybody's hunky-dory with. But the Pri Chadash says that Rabbeinu Tam is not nonsense. He blows it out of the water. According to Rabbeinu Tam, Kal v'chomer, any mitzvah you could do before it's nighttime. If you could read Kriya Shema before the sun sets and before the stars come out, so you could do the Megillah reading. So, you repeat it. So the Pri Chadash said, Rabbeinu Tam's opinion doesn't count. Okay, good. The Kal v'chomer doesn't exist. But there's still many more arguments for reading Megillah early. That wasn't the only argument. It's a straw man argument. Yes, Rabbeinu Tam would say, of course you can read the Megillah early. You could do everything early. You don't even need Rabbeinu Tam. That's why I'm very surprised by this. The Vilna Gaon points this out. The Vilna Gaon allows for people to take in Shabbos early and do all these things. It's, like I said, deeply frustrating that they make all these impositions on people. Maybe this year I'll actually do it. I'm because I have guests and stuff, and a Shever Brach is coming up. It's never worked out that we read Megillah late on Tanis Esther for the benefit of the Tzibur, because the Tzibur is usually not ready anyways, right? No one's going to gather for Mincha, but now it looks like we will have the opportunity to do exactly as the Shulchan Aruch said. And I have it on good authority that one is allowed to follow the opinions expressed in the Shulchan Aruch. As a matter of fact, those are the most mainstream halakhic opinions, correct? Someone's going to tell you this, you can't follow what the Shulchan Aruch says. Has anybody ever said such a thing like that? There are things that people don't do in the Shulchan Aruch here and there. That's true. But to go and say the Shulchan Aruch is illegitimate, especially when he brings what is the Minhag Yisrael and says it and has basis for doing so, that's a little bit strange. Okay. I wanted to show you, gentlemen, an issue that was here. I sent you some Makomos about it. You could open it up on your phone. That let's just review what we talked about on Tuesday. By we, I mean you, and not me. What did it say about eating Korban Pesach? What is the halacha? How do you have to eat your Korban Pesach? Sleep. Now, what was the point of that? When the Gemara was discussing what do you have to do, you can't cook it, right? So there was a line there that what would it do? Okay, what would cooking the Korban Pesach do? Well, first of all, what's sleep? Let's backtrack a little bit. Why dafka roasted? There is a sugya there. There's in Yerushalmi mentions this in other places that in the temple the Kohanim had someone in charge of cooking the sacrificial meat. There's a Kohen who cooks it for everybody, and they eat the chatas and they eat the asham, correct? Assuming there is a chatas. On a regular day like today, there was a korban tamid. That's just an olah. and Ketzim's Beach, to make sure things are going so they have extra lambs to go. It's not Musaf, but just in case. Do Kohanim eat of those? No. But if someone were to bring a chatas or an asham, or if it's a moed like Rosh Chodesh, there's a chatas to be eaten. It's a goat. A regular man brings a chatas, it's a she lamb, correct? A ewe. That's what the Kohanim have to eat in the temple times, right? Now, they could eat it any way they want. There is a fellow who has a large pot. It talks about actually cooking the meat of the chatas in a pot. It says, Uchli cheres asher tivu shabo yishaver. And if there's a kli nechoshes bushala, umarak v'shutaf b'mayim. It means that they were boiling or stewing the meat of the chatas. That's the most common thing that the Kohanim eat. And it's cooked. It doesn't say they roasted it on a spit, but they did do this. Elsewhere, Chazal say that when Kohanim receive the matanos, what are the matanos? That's chulin. Matanos means regular Jew slaughters a bull for consumption. He needs to give some of that bull's meat to the Kohen as his portion. That doesn't have kedusha necessarily, but he has to deliver it to the Kohen as it's the Kohen's property. So what is the Kohen supposed to do with that? The Gemara says it's recommended that he roast the meat and eat it like a ben melech, roasted with what condiment do they recommend? Not ketchup, but mustard. That's what they say. So there are those among the Rishonim who point out that the point of eating the Korban Pesach dafka roasted, this is the Chinuch's opinion. Why do we eat the Korban Pesach roasted? That's B'nai Malachim. Okay? He says, She'ein kavod l'fnei malachim v'yo atzei eretz ligror atzamos v'shover kichlavim. We shouldn't break the bones. And they also say, L'fi shekach derech b'nei malachim v'sarim lechol b'sar tzli shehu ba'achal tov umudam. B'nei malachim and sarim, how do they eat their meat? Roasted. That's the best way. That's the tastiest. Aval sharam einam yicholim lechol ma'at basar shetasigadam. Regular people don't get that much meat. So what do? So they cook it. If you cook the meat, all the nutrition stays in there. You cook in a pot of cholent, you take your raw meat, cook it in there. You don't lose any of the calories, any of the fat. But if you're to take that same cholent meat and roast it over a fire, how much of the juices fall off into the fire? A significant amount. It actually loses a lot of weight in water. So that's actually nutrition there. So like he says, Kedei l'malei vitnam. If you wanted to eat your meat the most efficient way, you eat it cooked. That's how poor people do. Fancy pants people get to roast their meat. So there is something better about roasting the meat. The problem with what the Chinuch writes is that it's contradicted by the Gemara we read 2 days ago. Why? Well, first of all, that we already saw that Dafka in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohanim have no such requirement to eat their meat roasted. As a matter of fact, the Torah assumes, how did the Kohanim eat their sacrificial meat Dafka in the temple? Stewed. It says they were using earthenware and bronze pots. That's the assumption since the times of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what Aaron was eating, and that's what they ate in Second Temple times. Secondly, you guys remember what it says in the Gemara? There's a kal v'chomer. How do you know you can't eat? You should eat your meat roasted, and you can't eat it in shar mashkim. Let's say it said water. That's explicit in the Torah. You're not allowed to bashal mevushal b'mayim in water. You can't cook it. Shar mashkin minayim. This is a Gemara. It should sound familiar. Amarta kal v'chomer. Ma mayim she'ein mefigin tam on asurim. There's a kal v'chomer. You know how water that ruins the taste. You water it down your meat. If you were to take a good steak and boil it in water, boil your steak. Anybody here boil a steak? Go to the whatever steakhouse you enjoy. Ask them, instead of roasting that steak, make it nice medium rare, throw it into a pot of boiling water and then serve it to me after 4 minutes. How will it taste? Okay, mefigin tam on asurin. If you would boil it, mefigin tam, what's the hafig tam? It means to extract the taste. Remove the taste. Turn my steak into the same steak, but extract the taste from it. That's why I want it. Okay. Shar mashkin shemefigin tam and lo kol shekain is not a kal v'chomer that any other liquid in which you could possibly cook your Korban Pesach will even further remove the taste. If you were to cook your Korban Pesach in, let's say, salt water, or in, I don't know, let's say apple juice, so it's going to taste even less like it's supposed to, right? That's what the Gemara is kal v'chomer. The Gemara started with the kal v'chomer. And Rabbi says, No, it's just a limud. Shar mashkim minayin. It says uvashel bevushel mikol makom. Mayim is explicit. Shar mashkim you learn from a limud of the pasuk. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, by the way, what is he saying here? I agree with the premise. Water does ruin the taste, and that would ruin it, and that's what water's doing. But what is he saying? Still, the shar mashkim is already included in the isser. But the reason, the assumed reasoning of the Gemara that the let's say the Tana Kama has here, the Stam Tana Rabbanon, what are they saying? The assumption is true. Mayim is Mefikin Talmon. That's usser. Shar mashkim kol shekain. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is saying, I disagree with your conclusion, but I do not disagree with your premise. If he disagreed with the premise, he would have said, that's not the reason for this. It's Xeris HaKasav. But he doesn't say that. The Mayim is actually a reason. Sometimes Chazal tell you, you're not allowed to go and say, I know the reason for the mitzvah, and therefore I could actually make a nafkamina. Who made that major mistake? Who Chazal say? He darshan the reason for the Yisr, and then he assumed that was the reason. He said it doesn't apply. Shlomo Melech. Oh yeah, good. Everybody, Shlomo Melech, good. You're not supposed to do that. That's a mistake. But when Chazal tell you what the reason is, sometimes there's a pasuk that tells you a reason for something. Sometimes Chazal actually let slip. Chazal have let slip here. In the Rishami, for example, the same opinions are there. And this is actually brought by the Rambam that there's all these rules. But the point is, Hamura Mehem, that all the Tanaim agree that the premise of the Chal V'chomer, that you're not supposed to cook the Korban Pesach because that ruins the taste. And by the way, they connected it to matzah, by the way. What they say about matzah, Rabbi Yossi's opinion, which is held by Halacha, the Rishonim Paskin like Rabbi Yossi, Neged, Rabbi Meir. What does Rabbi Yossi say? Yotzein b'rakika sharui umvimushal shaloni moach. That's Rabbi Meir. What's a rakik? A rakik means flatbread. Normally assume that you make matzah flat, not cracker. We saw before. How do the Rishonim translate rakik? Starting with unkelus. He's not a Rishon. He's a Tana. No, is pogim. Spongy. Okay? Sponge bread. Flat sponge bread. How do you make flat sponge bread? Well, there are bakeries here that still do it. Okay? It's what we call a lafa nowadays. Lafa style matzah. That's the traditional way. Who echoes this idea and says rakik means this ispogin? Rashi, Ramban, and Rambam. As a matter of fact, that's why the Ramah says we make ispogin, not thicker than a thumb. Cracker matzahs are from the 1800s. Okay? That's a newfangled idea in Judaism. So that's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says that technically speaking, if you were to soak your matzah, you take your rakik and soak it in water so it's like falling apart, or if you cook it, as long as it's not totally dissolved, one discharges his obligation of eating matzah by eating that, I guess, water-treated matzah. Crazy, right? What does Rabbi Yossi say? Anybody remember? Rabbi Yossi's opinion against Rabbi Meir. He says you're not Yotzei. He says the problem with making your matzah all wet or soaking it or cooking it is that what? Yeah, but what Tom specifically? He's very careful about here, and Rashi also says very exact. Rabbi Yossi Meir Yotzin b'rakika sharui aval lo b'mvushal afal pishin lo nimuach. Once you cook it, you can't. If it's been wetted, technically you could. And by the way, you recommend this to people. Yeah, soaked it. Yeah, the gebrochts. How do you do it? So they have cracker matzahs. Some people have a hard time with that. You know what you do? You spray them with water right before you eat them and let them sit for like 5 minutes. And now they'll be soft. Okay, it's like stale crackers, but at least it's easier to eat. Rashi says, "The lav lechem karina bay." If you've cooked it, it ain't bread no more. This is connected to another sugya in Menachos and in challah, which we have over here, which basically talks about the ingredients of matzah and challah. It has to have the taste of wheat. Rice doesn't have the taste of wheat. There's ways you can mix in proportions depending on what's the majority and how much by weight, and it still retains the taste. As a matter of fact, you've probably seen in Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah and the Beis Yosef agree on this one. Let's say one were to make a matzah out of wheat and rice. Does he discharge his obligation therewith? And the answer is yes, as long as it has a taste of dagan, which is the wheat. It has to have a weedy taste. But technically speaking, the Ramah, who by the way held of Stam Isser Kitnius, assumed that if you're eating your rice as matzah, why should it be prohibited? Remember? We talked about this last year. So there you have it. Cooking the matzah that's already been baked in an oven destroys its bread properties. And they say this is connected to the idea of roasting the Korban Pesach. So you'd have to have it roasted. And even if you'd roast it, say, now it's good to eat, on the plate, can I dip my matzah and mashkin? My Korban Pesach. Once it's been roasted on the plate, can I take a piece of meat and dunk it in some sort of sauce? It's not bishul. Why not? Because it's not hot. Not cooking it. If the sauce were a kli rishon, let's say on the fire, let's say, I would be mavashal the Korban Pesach even after it's roasting. So the Gemara says you learn one from the other. In both cases, this Gemara is telling you the point of roasting the Korban Pesach and maintaining its taste as roasted, and the point of baking the matzah and keeping it tasting like bread is that dafka tastes the way it's supposed to taste. That's what this Gemara is saying. So this is against the chinuch. The chinuch said you roast the Korban Pesach because that's the royal thing to do. That's what rich people do, and that tastes better. But in here, no, you see that it's not so much the case. And by the way, this connects to the Gemara and the sugya we have earlier regarding what? Maror. What does it say about maror? What's the din? Anybody remember this one? It says here that the point of maror is that it tastes like maror. You have to have these vegetables, and if you cook any of them, or you pickle them, or there's a difference between the shaluk and muvushal. Shaluk is lesser level of cooking. Muvushal is more level of cooking. Either way, you pre-cook your vegetables, your marors, whatever the 5 vegetables are. One does not discharge his obligation to eat maror with such things. Why not? Yeah, and maror, by the way, is the only thing. Why did Chazal say eat lettuce? Why did the Torah say eat lettuce? Maror is dafka al shem its taste. Okay, it's not even specific. The vegetables that are bitter. That's what it means. And you have to have them, dafka, the ones that are bitter, that taste the way they are supposed to taste, not changed. Hamura mehem. What do you get from this? That which we are enjoined to eat on Passover, Pesach, matzah, and maror, dafka have to taste a very specific way. When you were to eat bread on any other Shabbos or Yontif, you do not have to have the bread taste a certain way. When you eat kachim, whether in the Beis HaMikdash or outside the Beis HaMikdash, you have a shlamim to do, God willing, tomorrow. So you'll invite your friends to eat sacrificial meat with you sometime somewhere in the old city. What's going to be? You could cook that shlamim any way you like, and you could even make it taste not like meat anymore if that's that floats your boat. And you could eat lettuce and horseradish, whatever you want, and make it not taste like it used to, and you're still eating it. There's totally fine. But on Passover, these items that you are eating, dafka have to taste the way they're supposed to taste. Which brings us to the last point before we go over here. We're going to continue on the daf. What does it say regarding making a sandwich? Halacha kaman. On Passover, will you be able to take your matzah, maror, and korban pesach and eat them together? You're saying no. Can you make a sandwich like Hillel? Let's assume like the correct, what? So wait, what did Hillel do? It says Hillel korech shlashton, pesach, matzah, maror, and then he ate it. So what was Hillel doing? Was he doing the right thing? So Rabbi Yochanan says, Chalukan alav chaverov. Hillel's friends disagreed with him. That means all the Rabbanon said, Hillel, you can't do it that way.
Because they both by Levant.
Yeah. So all 3 mitzvahs are doraisa. All 3 mitzvahs have to taste a certain way. If one were to eat a shlamim on Shabbos, to be yotzei Shabbos meal of eating bread and eating the shlamim, he could put it into a sandwich with 5 different things and drown it in mustard so he doesn't even taste the bread or the meat. And he's yotzei. But for Korban Pesach, he has to dafka taste everything individually, which is why Korban Pesach, we eat them all separately. So why is it that we make a sandwich? Well, we don't have Korban Pesach. We eat the matzah and maror together, zecher lemikdash, like Hillel used to do. But Hillel's wrong. I mean by wrong, I mean Hillel's opinion was put aside. And the answer is like the Rambam says. They disagree with Hillel because 1 mitzvah is overpowered by 2. Sandwich is 3 mitzvahs. If you only have matzah and maror, the maror itself is no longer d'oraisa. Now it's just matzah d'oraisa and maror d'rabbanan. And that you can do like Hillel. And Rambam says further, even when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, Rabbi Yochanan's correct. All three together, no good. But you can do matzah and maror together because those are two separate tastes. Neither overpowers the other. So the Rambam says, this is how he paskins, if you have Korban Pesach on the table, you have two options. Pesach will be last. You could eat matzah and then maror and then Pesach, or matzah maror together in a sandwich, then Pesach. And in which case there are different brachas. Matzah and maror together, one bracha for the two mitzvahs. Ala chilas matzah umrorim, or maror, whatever the text might be. Or you could do like we do, matzah, then maror. But either way, work. They're both legitimate options for eating your matzah and maror. You can eat them a sandwich or not. And you only have to eat it once. That's the Rambam. That's what we're going to do. So I don't know, the Sanhedrin hasn't spoken about this yet, but be aware, please. You probably saw this in Haggadah. If you have a copy of Haggadah Pesach, it makes it very clear. There's two options. One way, matzah, then maror, then Pesach, or matzah maror together, plus Pesach. The Rambam also holds that both the matzah and maror are dipped in charoses. If you make it a sandwich, dip them together. If you're eating them separate, each one is dipped separately. You don't have to shake off the maror, the charoses. It's actually a mitzvah to eat the charoses. Okay, so you make it a hearty sandwich. But if you do it like Hillel, you're not Yotzei. That is the majority opinion. Questions, comments? No? No, yes.
Includes what Hillel was doing when it was wrong.
Zecher lemikdash. Kihillel. Not exactly. We do, the Rambam doesn't even have the word Hillel there. The Rambam says Zecher lemikdash. When last year you ate a sandwich of matzah and maror, according to the Rambam, you were doing Zecher lemikdash, eating matzah and maror together, like they do in the temple. But not like Hillel, without Korban Pesach in the middle. Okay? Not like Hillel. They're girsas, just Zecher lemikdash, when you did that. God willing, this year you're not going to have to do such a thing. You'll eat matzah once, you'll eat maror once. You can eat as much as you want, but you won't have two separate achilas. They probably tell you have a chart that tells you there's the mitzvah of eating matzah once you did last year, and then you ate maror, and then you had to eat another portion again of both. So you had two kazesim or two kibetzas, whatever it might be. But when you have Korban Pesach, you only need one dose of each. And surprise, surprise, you don't have to have another dose of matzah as afikomen. Why? You know, the Korban Pesach. Okay, and then you get into the big question, which we started this whole thing with. Normally, when a person can't bring a korban, what does he do? Really? No, I didn't see that. Person had no chance. The korban didn't happen. So you read the korban. What? No. Normally. Forget Pesach. Today there was no korban. Did they mention this? You have a Shabbos Musaf. Oh, no lambs for Musaf. Let us nishal mafarim sifasenu. It works for Yechidim and for Etzibur, correct? But Korban Pesach, no such thing. You don't say, well, there's no Korban Pesach on the table. Let's read the halachas of Korban Pesach or the biblical passages regarding Korban Pesach at the Seder. It's not in Haggadah. The old Haggadah that used in Golus, I never saw anything about Korban Pesach in there. No Korban Pesach, so nishal mafarim sifasenu, correct? Doesn't exist for Korban Pesach. Instead, what do you have? Dafka eats something else and it's matzah. Double up on eating matzah. Kind of strange. Like, how does it help? It's like, I don't have to fill in, so I'll wear another talis. Is there such a thing? Okay, so, check in your Haggadah Pesach for the answer. Let's go into Mem Aleph Amud Beis. Hold on one second. I'm going to switch screens here. Where is it? Gentlemen, give me a second. Here, I want to put on the daf. Sorry, the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, right? There's some drushes here. Yeah, drushes are the hardest thing. Like, we can understand the pshat of what it says, but we don't make drushes anymore. Chazal used to make drushes and tell us how to do it. But no one's been doing that for a few thousand years. All right? So here he says, Rava says, Ahalo na, a person were to eat the Korban Pesach na. What do we say na is? Does it mean raw? Yeah. Partially cooked. So if one were to eat it partially cooked, he's now getting into... The Rambam has a passage there where he says what na is, and Rashi also tells you no. It doesn't mean like that. And they say it comes from the Arabic. Because if you read it, stam, al tochalu mimenu na, in Hebrew, if the word na was Hebrew, it would mean, please don't eat from it. No, I was like, please, making it to a request. Al tochalu mimenu, no. That's what it would mean in Hebrew. But no in this case is taken from the Arabic, meaning half cooked. Not even machal ben drushay. What? No, that'd be chai. Yeah. Yeah. That was the Gemara from 2 days ago. Very interesting.
Also, she'itchil bo ma'aseh ha'ur v'mitz lama'an.
Yeah.
Ve'eno roy la'achilas adam adayin. That's important.
It's less than machal ben drushay. As we saw in Pesach. There's also a Rashi. Rashi says it in a few places. It's a very important word to know. Sometimes you have these obscure words, so you have to make a note of it to avoid confusion. Let's pick out my own Gemara over here. You said this, Rashi? Legamrei shalun tzla. Chai. Chai is legamrei shalun tzla. Chai is raw. And na is tzli ve'eno tzli. Roasted, but not roasted. Okay. Not edible yet.
Before it becomes edible.
Yeah. By the way, I have a note here. Do you see this? Steinsaltz makes a note of this. You had talked about the Chami Tiveria. You cook the Pesach in Chami Tiveria. It doesn't mean you have a volcanic pool of water there that's hot, and you actually take your meat with a pitchfork and you stick it into that water. Correct? Why?
Why?
Well, Chami Tiveria. It said the Isser, if you cook your Pesach in Chami Tiveria, it wouldn't be kosher. Right? No. So it doesn't mean this. Take the Korban Pesach meat, cut it off the bone without breaking the bone, a large piece of meat on a fork, dunk it into the hot water. It doesn't mean that. That's bashul mavushal. Of course that wouldn't be. What's the chiddush of Chami Tiveria? What?
But the Gemara is talking.
So how do you make it in Chami Tiveria without bishling it? So they point out, Rishonim say, like the Rambam. The Rambam says this explicitly. You have a Rambam over there? The Rambam says it's like harsis. If you were to make the tiles hot or something like that, and then cook the Korban Pesach on that, that wouldn't be tzli eish. So too, if you were to suspend the Korban Pesach over the hot pool, it would not be considered tzli eish, because the volcanic water is not eish. That's what he says there. I think it's on the left side of the page. You can see. But it doesn't mean dunk the Pesach. Of course, dunking the Pesach into the hot water would not make the Pesach kosher, because that's bishul mamish. The chiddush is, yeah.
The Gemara comes to the opposite.
Yeah.
conclusion.
Yeah. When it says Bichami Tiveria, I'm trying to give you their interpretation here. Yeah. The Rambam. I'll read this over here.
The Rambam can't go, but the Gemara says explicitly.
Yeah.
that It's not bishul.
It's not bishul.
Like
I know.
Shabbos, it's not bishul because it's not told it's or.
Correct. But what is the method of how he's doing it? On Shabbos, I'll give you an example. If you were to have volcanic water on Shabbos and you put an egg into there, you are not being Michal Shabbos.
It's
Okay.
not bishul.
No, but it's not bishul or. On Shabbos, the standard is using fire. Volcanic water, or let's say solar heated, that's not bishul. So you could technically make tea in solar heated water. You put the tea bag in the water, let it get hot in the sun or in your dud shemesh if you could put tea in there. My point was that for Korban Pesach, the standard is different. If you were to take Korban Pesach and put it into Chami Tiveria, that would be a form of bishul. Not that you're over on Shabbos, but it's a form of bishul that makes the Korban Pesach not tasty anymore. It's not considered roasted. So the Hava of the Gemara is, yeah, if you give me the Rambam there.
Confusing a couple of things.
No.
I'm
Yeah.
confusing a couple-
Okay, well, maybe, yeah.
It's not bishul. I'm not over, I don't transgress the Isser law of bishul.
On Shabbos or on Pesach?
Shabbos for sure,
Mm-hmm.
even Pesach, because the same thing applies. It's not called bishul. So what am I over? I'm over that I didn't eat it sleep. That's what the Gemara says.
Yes. So,
I'm a Rava, my chayiv, we had a minute to think that chayiv is called bishul, but it can't be bishul because you know bishul without or. The katani, the kohavar bishul tzliesh. I'm over because it's not tzliesh.
yes. So but it's not Sli'esh. So the Rambam says there, it means that you suspended the Pesach over the hot water. Okay.
Put it in the water.
If you put it if you put it in the water, that'd definitely be bishul. That would be totally, there's no havamin about that.
Not visual.
No.
Bishul is defined by or. There is no or.
No, that's only on Shabbos. They make that
No.
distinction there. Look.
Third.
Oh.
Look.
Mm-hmm.
Pro decides, we agree that you're not chayav in Bishul. We're chayav because it's not Sliyesh.
Yeah, it's a sleep.
It's not Bishul.
So do you have the Rambam there? Here, read it there on the left side.
Which Rambam? Which
Here,
halacha?
I'll give it to you. Look,
Which halacha?
It's this one.
You read it.
Everybody mentions.
Read it to everybody.
Okay, fine. Here. He seek is tanur. What does that mean? No, he seek et hatanur. Means he fired up the oven, right? The garafet kol ha'esh, like you're supposed to do on Shabbos.
Okay.
Now it's just a flaming hot oven, but there's no fire left in the oven. There's no coals left in the oven.
Okay.
So what do? V'talahu b'tanur v'tzalahu. The residual heat of the oven roasts it. Hareza aser shames it sliesh.
Okay.
Okay, so use the residual heat of oven, which used to be fire. That's not sliesh. Thank you. He puts peas directly on gecholim. Gecholim are fire, so that's sliesh. Salahu al gabi sidur charsis uchami tiveria. Al gabe. What are these things? Sid is hot. What's that mineral? Hot lime. Okay, it's lime. And charsis. Charsis is earthenware pieces.
Okay.
Really hot earthenware, or agabe chame tiveria. Hareze aser shames it sliesh. It means if he suspends it above the chame tiveria, it's not sliesh. That's what the Rambam says. The Gemara says. But kal v'chomer, if you were to stick it into the water, that would be sliesh. Okay, that's
would not,
prohibition.
of course, it's not Sliyesh.
Okay, but
Nor is it cooked.
no, but that is considered cooking. When Chazal talked about that's not cooking, it meant on Shabbos you're not over on cooking.
No, you're not. That for sure.
Yeah.
That we know from before.
Yeah.
What's if I am taking if I take this meat, this corn pesach, and dunk it into the chametz very.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Have I done any isser whatsoever? And
Well,
I ate it.
Okay. Here's another thing we must point out. No, I have to make this distinction very carefully. We have a note here that in Achinami, when they're talking about the loka isn't for the person doing the cooking; it's for the person doing the eating after it's cooked. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. That's not so clear. I saw a mistake in was it Art Scroll or somewhere else. Fine. So here's how we read the Gemara. You're with me? I'll read it to you here. Okay. Amar Rav Chisda, Hamavashel b'chami tiveria b'Shabbos pater. Why? Like Rabbi Bronspiel taught us, it's not fire. Then, by the way, it's the same din: volcanic fire or solar fire. Okay. Perhaps even microwave is not even ish. Correct. Pesach should be shelo b'chami tiveria chayav. If I say means chayav, not the cooker, the person who ate it.
Right.
Bishlo b'chami tiveria would be chayav. Chayav for eating it.
For eating what?
The korban pesach. Korban pesach cooked in chami tiveria.
What? The korban pesach. That's cooked.
Chami tiveria. But we don't. I haven't explained it. I have explained it what chami tiveria is. I haven't yet explained it. No, it does make a difference. I'll tell you why it makes a difference, because by the Rambam, the way the Rambam understands this Gemara is that b'chami tiveria doesn't mean dunked in chami tiveria. It means above, over the heat. Yeah, but there's a big nafkamina.
Cooking.
Okay,
Rashi says it explicitly.
Rashi says, I'm not working with Rashi here, I'm working with the Rambam, but I'll read the Rashi. Okay, what does he say? The soul is Eish Bein and Veleka. The Pesach Nami, it's all it says here. Hilkach lo bishul dil havi chaya mishum av melocha. Okay, no, that's not the right Rashi. Mishum sliesh lav de lo tachal kim sliesh imika velo lav the vishul the savar lokin alav shebechlalos. Okay, so
Go back. Pesach shebishlu b'chametz very.
Al achilaso chayav achilaso, not on the cooking, right? Rashi is saying that because of the raitach, the havamina is mishum de lo sochal mavushal. Okay, the havamina was this is just the havamina. According to Rashi, there's a havamina. Let's tell you.
Is that it's you will be chayav because bavushal. The answer is it's not chayav b'fum bavushal because it's not bishul. Just the same day as Shabbos.
No, not the same thing.
Day as Shabbos.
No,
It's not bishul. You're not understanding the Gemara properly.
Okay, so I guess I'll have to, I should have brought the Nosekim on the Rambam.
Because it's not slim. That's the issue you get. And
Uh,
that's why you get Malchus. You don't get Malchus for Bishul because it's not Bishul. You get Malchus, not Yesh.
Right.
Okay, so what I was trying to get at is that the way the Rambam has it is that is correct if you would have suspended it, if you had suspended it. The Rambam doesn't say if you dunk it in the Chami Tveria. Why? That would certainly be Bishul. That's the point. Yeah. No, it would be. It would be a Bishul.
It's not.
No, it's not the malacha of Bishul, but it is Bishul of accomplishing it. Okay.
If I take an egg and
Yeah.
put it in the chametz area, the result is also cooking.
Yeah,
But it's not called cooking halachically.
it is called cooking halachically, just not a malacha of Shabbos. It's a mutter form of cooking.
That's not called halachic cooking.
No, it is halachically cooking. There's an afkamina there.
In the end, it's cooked. How is it cooked? Not
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they could do that. For example, if you were,
Now you're telling me that
Yeah.
that
it's not, yeah, I'm trying to
It's not-
be a brisker here. I don't think so. No, that's not how it goes. On Shabbos, we have it that something is the halachic definition of the result. And then there is also the action that you do. So on Shabbos, for example, if no humans involved, it all happened by nature. God made it Rube Goldberg machine somehow that we got a result. Chazal will call that bishul. Chazal will call that a plowed field. However, no one actually did a malacha, so there's no malacha involved. It's not a malacha. Okay, that's the nafkamina. Yeah,
Like totzah is mevushal, but you didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't cook it the normal.
The totzah is mevushal. No, so the nafkamina would be that if, let's say, it fell into the fire, it fell into the chametz tiverio, or something falls in by accident. The what happens here? The bird takes up your raw steak on Shabbos and drops it into your urn on your counter, which you left open for some reason because there's 3 gallons of water in there, and then you somehow fish out the meat. Oh, it's fully cooked on Shabbos, so that's been fully cooked and that's edible. But you did not do the malacha of bishul. Yeah,
So,
that's what I'd say. That on Shabbos, the standard is did you do a malacha or not? On Pesach, the question is the result. Yeah, is it roasted or whatever? Really? Okay, so I should bring the Pesach with me here. You want me to bring it next week? Or look at it? Yeah. Okay. No, I think that there's room to say that, but not in the Rambam. Okay, let's see here. We're gonna jump. What is this yellow thing on the screen suddenly? Okay, I somehow was able to scribble on the screen. I don't know how. So let's go to the next off. Here we're at Lukas time. Yeah. So why would a person get hit twice for doing such a thing? What did Rava just? Eyewitnesses. Achalona lokeshtayim. What are the two infractions here? You have to have 2 psukim. Lokeshtayim. We'll work with Rashi, not Rabbeinu Tam. What?
It half roasted, and it wasn't roasted.
Yeah. So you could say like twice. He Dafke didn't know. The pasuk says don't eat it now, and he did so. And he didn't accomplish the positive commandment of sliesh. Ki'im sliesh.
there is no positive commandment.
No, that's what we're going to get to. So ki'im sliesh. However you do it, how do they count it? And there's actually a machlokas here. How do you go about counting your mitzvahs? Right? It's a Rambam thing. It has a whole treatise about it. How they count the mitzvahs and well, you don't like that?
It says Lokish Shayim,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You get it, did you get Malchus for doing that mitzvah salsa? Did you go?
No. So you're not. That's we're going to get to. I'm giving a havamina here. How to count? You first have to count counts. Like if you're going to bring someone into Beis Din, you have to say what did he violate and what did you tell him not to do. Right. That's what they're going to ask. There's a due process here. If anytime you have lashes, you have to say, well, what did he do wrong, and who's accusing you of doing wrong? So Rashi says, Mishum lo tochal na, al tochlu mimenu na, and also Mishum lo tochilu kiim sleish. Okay, but it doesn't say lo tochlu pamayim twice. No, it said al tochlu mimenu na uvashel b'shomayim kiim sleish. The lo tochilu, and the Rashi reduced it to the singular, only appears how many times in the pasuk?
Here's once. and it
Here's
goes
once.
on 3 things.
goes on all three things. Yeah, that's a Yiddish expression. It says al tuchlu mimenu na uvashel b'shomayim esnach, right? And it says ki im sliesh. So according to the Trupp, at least, the lo tochilu, for lack of a better word, does not go on the ki im sliesh necessarily, at least according to the Bali Masora. So Rashi continues and he says the chi im sliesh nami alav the lo tochlu kai. Rav is telling you, read the pasuk as though it does refer to that. But you see that there's a disagreement here. Who disagrees? We're going to get to that. Na umvusho loka shalosh. By this logic,
But nobody disagrees.
Abai disagrees.
That they read the pasuk that no tofu goes on all three.
So he says, what does Abai mean? We're going to get to his line. Abai says, "Ein lokan alav shel bichlalos." We haven't seen the long encyclopedia
Abai is not
Talmudica.
disagreeing that it's
Yeah.
that it's a law that goes in, that the low tofu goes on all three. Abai is agreeing with the Marcus for it.
Yeah. So what? But what's the argument against it?
Argument is what?
What Rava says makes good sense. If you say that it says lo tochilu includes na vushol, two mavushol, na, and ki im sliesh, right? It's like the distributive property of mathematics. Everything of that is in the bracket. It says lo tochilu, these three factors. He says it's lasha b'chlalos, and therefore he would only be lashed how many times?
Depends on one, depends on zero. There's a different bunch of different explanations of.
Yes, he says the drasha of lavsha b'chlalos is basically saying that it for what? Only eat a fish. Yeah, but he says more than that. It says it's a. He means that it's a generality, and for some reason you could say that only get hit once because it's all one isser, or you might have to say, like you said, nothing. Lavsha b'chlalos is too general. For whatever it might be, includes everything, and therefore there's no lashes that are inflicted for such a thing. Okay, so yeah. Now, what do you say here? They have to actually compare it to another Avera over here. He says, "Igadamri tarti hu the lo lucky, kadamias lucky." That's within Abaye. The Igadamri is within Abaye. Maybe he's lashed once, maybe none. And the Igadamri kadanami lo lucky de lo miyachid lave kalav de chasima. My point is that when Abai looks at this pasuk, he says, you might have read it with the distributive property, but doing the distributive property of the lo tochalu means that, technically speaking, none of them are considered a real lav. If it was lav de chasima, what would it say lav de chasima? Lo sachsum shor bedisho. Okay, so that's a straight up lav, because it's very clear that the lav, the don't, is one simple idea, one very specific idea. The second you try to take this idea and distribute it beyond where it was supposed to be, you've made it too general, and now you have a ptur. Okay? If you could somehow have this idea that you've extended the law, because it's lo tochalu mimenu na, it starts with the lo tochalu, and then if how would we make this pasuk look like lav de chasima? What would the pasuk read if it was dumya de lav de chasima?
Would specify the specific actions.
So what would it say? Make up the.
Or,
and then just stop there.
yes.
Yeah. So the fact that it continued, Rava says it continues. So now we have the distributed property. Abai is saying it went too far. It's like a tafasta meruba type of thing, and now you don't get anything. Now, yeah, okay. So there we go. I think we're sort of running out of time here. So before we get into the next prohibition, what's the next one? Zog. Yeah.
What are you inferring from that?
Oh, what am I inferring? That Abai says that this is a general way to understand the psukim. That when you look at this pasuk and you want to try to convict someone of committing, let's say, the sin of doing this and that, and you have to testify in court, right? They're going to ask you. They're going to ask the witnesses, what did this individual do, and what did you tell him not to do beforehand? Right? You have to know. The witnesses have to be a little bit. Have gone to Cheder to understand how this works. Yeah.
Punishment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what he said. We're talking about how many punishments, talking about how many times to lash the guy.
So Machlok is you get Malchus.
Yeah.
Everybody agrees that there are three Isurim here. Nobody's arguing that you're not allowed to eat it. No, you're not allowed to eat bavusha, and you should eat it You must eat it by tzli. Everybody agrees to that. What they're arguing is, should I get malchus for it or not? So Rava says, yeah, you get malchus, and in this particular case, because actually you don't need no, and you don't need mavusha.
Should say just.
So it says,
only
eat,
tzli.
that's it, says,
Eat
al
korban.
tochlu ki tzli.
Yeah.
And that includes, excludes every other kind of thing. It only includes I have to eat it roasted. But it doesn't say that. So Rava says this is unique. Rava doesn't disagree with the principle of lav b'chololos, you don't get malchus. This is unique because it specifies things that you can do. And therefore, roasted you have to do, but if you ate it raw or mavusha, then you get malchus for that. That Abaye disagrees with. He says that lav b'chololos even goes on those things. That's the machlokas.
I think that,
Everybody
you know,
agrees that there's an issue involved.
I agree that there's some sort of isser, but in order to lash someone, you have to have a very specific type of isser. Okay, that's what they're trying to get at over here. Well,
He's having, I cooked it. I cooked it in a pot with water. That's an isser.
so there's a
And
Rambam.
therefore- And a Rava says, I'll get 2 malchus for that. Because there are 2 isurim that he transgressed. One isser was cooking it, the other one was not eating it roasted. Two
Okay,
isser. And Abaye says, no, because the not eating it roasted is a general thing, then he's partner from malchus.
so there is what to say. What you're saying, I actually saw in one of the Sfarim. There are Rishonim who say it that way.
I
Okay,
don't know, I mean, that's shot in Gemara,
well,
that's not.
that there, I'll, if I had time now, I'd give you a different shot. I'll give you different,
Simple shot.
I'll give you a different shot, especially you're going with the Rambam. I don't think that's the Rambam's shot. Yeah,
I have to read through the Rambam.
Yeah.
You can understand how he would think differently.
yeah. So that's what I wanted to get at. It's about counting the mitzvahs. Basically, the
Wait,
yeah.
maybe start next year on Sunday with this.
Okay, fine. So we'll pause there. It's a very interesting idea. I have to do the homework. I'll bring in two passages.
Six.
Yeah.
How the Rambam counts these 3 mitzvahs.
Well, it's also, he makes mention in that page you had open in the Rambam there. Yeah. So I have it in front of me also. I have everybody's looking at it here. I want to show something there, but I guess we'll look at it next time. So what's this week's parsha? Well,
Scott,
well, this week's parsha is not Shalom anymore. Now it's just Truma. And the mitzvah of Truma is what? Like they say, it's a mefurish in the Medrash Halach and the Rambam. It's a mitzvah to build a Beis HaMikdash. And it wasn't a one-time deal. It's an all-the-time deal. And you can't say, well, unlike Shkalim last week, there's no mitzvah to give Shkalim. If the temple's not standing, there's no mitzvah to give the half shekels, correct? And there's no mitzvah to bring Bikurim. However, even if the temple is not standing, there is a mitzvah to build the temple, and there's a mitzvah to bring the Korban Tamid. There's a mitzvah every day to rebuild the temple. There's a mitzvah every day to build the Mizbeach. And that's what the Jewish people should be focusing on, trying to do the mitzvahs. Every day you get mitzvahs. It turns out the mitzvah of Mechias Abalik is even relevant today, as you probably know from your grandsons. And you can't live in peace and have a chance to even build a Beis HaMikdash unless you take these mitzvahs and their practical applications to heart. It's not just an exercise in reading the Torah and reading it and going home. It's an exercise in actually saying, wait a minute, I want to try to do this. And God willing, just like we're here and we weren't here a few years ago, we should continue and working harder and getting to the point where we can do even more mitzvahs. So I'm going to stop the share there, and we'll get to this next time.
Rambam says,
Oh, what, Rambam? Yeah.
Law of the Kushal has 1 lotasa and doesn't say King Tzliish.
Yes, that's kind of surprising.
Yes.
Yes, okay. He doesn't even, and by the way, he doesn't even get into Lavsha B'chlalos. Rambam does mention elsewhere Ramsha B'chlalos and other halachas. What?
He doesn't consider it?
Yes, but not only that, but the Rambam.
saying.
hold on. But the Rambam does hold of lav shebechlalos. There, yeah, in Chicago's and other places, in regards to lashes. Well, yeah, the concept does exist. That's why, God willing, we'll talk about this more afterwards. Yeah. Oh, wait, you have a question? Yeah, it's still recording.
Sliyesh at all. If I fry it, according to the Rambam, that's okay.
No, you can't fry it. That's also a form of bishul.
If I fry it without water.
Yeah, because the like jelly donut thing. If you deep fry something, it's a form of cooking.
Deep fry.
In oil, but no, in a pan, also in a flat pan.
Teflon frying thing.
Yeah, that's a form of bishul. Grill is good. If it was perforated, if it was perforated, that'd be a good way.
I have it like this.
Yeah. So that would be a form of frying it. It's not kosher. We'll go into that. Because I guess we have to learn how to cook our Korban Pesach. See you next time.